Welcome to Repros Fight Back, a podcast where we explore all things reproductive health, rights, and justice. I'm your host, Jenny Wetter, and I'll be helping you stay informed around issues like birth control, abortion, sex education, and LGBTQ issues, and much, much more. Giving you the tools you need to take action and fight back. Okay, let's dive in. Hi, Repros, and welcome to this week's episode of Repros Fight Back. I'm your host, Jenny Wetter, and my pronouns are she, her. So, y'all, there has been a lot happening right now. First, some news from Population Institute, which is who sponsors our podcast. We have a new president and CEO who started yesterday. So I wanted to take an opportunity to give a great big warm welcome to Kathleen Mogelgaard. We are so excited to have her joining us as president and CEO. She was already actually with us as a senior fellow. So it's exciting to see her step up and become the new president and CEO, and we are all excited and can't wait to see what was going to be coming ahead. So welcome, Kathleen, and we're really excited to have you with us. And then on a less exciting note, other things that have been happening is that there have been a huge surge in attacks on abortion rights in the States. So oftentimes in the podcast, we focus a lot on the global level or talking about policy out of Congress. We don't always spend a ton of time on what's happening in the States. And it's really important because so much of the attacks on abortion access are happening at the state level. So we'll make sure to be talking about that more, and we'll talk about what has been happening more in depth other than just this intro. But the numbers were really shocking, and the Guttmacher Institute just released data on what has happened so far this year. And so if you want more information, definitely go to Guttmacher Institute to see all of the details and all of the restrictions that have been either introduced or enacted. So anyway, as of April 29th, so last week, states in the U.S. have introduced 536 abortion restrictions this year. Since January, 536. That is so many, y'all. Like, that is wild. On top of that, just thinking last week, April 26th through April 29th, states enacted 28 abortion restrictions. That is so wild. And since the beginning of the year, so since January 1st, 61 abortion restrictions have been enacted at the state level. And alone, looking at Arkansas itself has enacted 20. There has been just so much happening around abortion access. And, I feel like this year, there's been so much attention, rightfully so, paid on the just onslaught of attacks on trans rights at the state level, and that the abortion restrictions have kind of gone a little under the radar this year, unless there's been something new or wild. You haven't heard about abortion restrictions at the state level in the same way as we have heard about attacks on trans rights. And that's not to say we shouldn't be paying attention to trans rights, because we absolutely should. Like, the attacks that are happening are not slowing down, and they need to stop. It's unconscionable. Someone who follows abortion rights was pretty shocked to see 61 pieces have been enacted this year. 61 restrictions have been enacted this year. That is just kind of mind-blowing. So, if you want to see what those restrictions are and what ones have been introduced, Guttmacher has a tracker where you can see all of those things. So if you go to their website, you can see what has been enacted so far this year. If you want to just kind of get an idea of what the lay of the land is and how states are attacking abortion rights and how your state is faring, like how is access in your state and how does it compare to other states, you can actually go to our website, so populationinstitute.org/report card, and you'll see our 50 state report card we do every year, and you'll see how your state compares to others. I'm going to tell y'all, there's a lot of red Fs on that report card. When you look at the map, it is really striking how much red there is and how little blue, which is the As. At some point, we'll probably do an episode talking about the report card, but y'all should go take a look at it and see how your state is faring. Chances are it's not great. So with that, we'll talk about the other big milestone that happened last week. I know, like I said, so many things. So last week was also marked the first 100 days of the Biden-Harris administration. So we wanted to take this time this week to talk about what have they done in the first 100 days for reproductive health and rights. So joining me today to do that is Christina Krysinski at NARAL. And I'm so excited to have Christina with us today to talk about Biden's first 100 days in office. So with that, I will take you to my interview with Christina. Hi, Christina. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me. I am thrilled to be here. It's been, I've long been a fan, but first time on.
Yay! So before we get started, do you want to take a second and introduce yourself and include your pronouns?
Sure thing. So my name is Christina Krysinski. My pronouns are she, her, and I am the Counsel and Senior Manager of Policy at NARAL Pro-Choice America.
So I'm excited because we're going to talk about mostly good things, which I feel like is rare, but we're having 2 good things episodes back to back. So that's extra rare. But also, I cannot believe we have just finished the first 100 days of the Biden administration. Like, how? It so fast and so long at the same time. Like everything right now. So what have they done so far? And maybe because we're going to cover a big swath of things, we'll break it up into buckets. So let's start with what have they done on the global side?
That is great. And yes, as you said, as of this recording, we are just past the 100-day mark, and there is really no denying that there's a pretty stark difference as a result of this change in leadership. And while we know that the work continues, there actually is a lot to celebrate. So on the global side, in his second week in office, the president took some really key executive actions, including ending the global gag rule. So the Trump administration's expanded global gag rule was really a hallmark of Trump's efforts to undermine sexual and reproductive health and rights around the world. And we were more than ready to see it gone during this administration. We'll be even more ready to see it gone forever when that day comes. The second thing I want to make sure to mention is that the president began the process of restoring funding to UNFPA, which really plays a critical role in access to reproductive health services around the world. And that funding is really particularly urgent to address gaps in access to care that have been exposed by the pandemic. So that was very exciting. And then another thing I want to make sure to highlight was that the president withdrew U.S. support for Trump administration anti-choice, anti-LGBTQ document called the Geneva Consensus Declaration. And that declaration was also really an attempt from the Trump administration to undermine international consensus around sexual and reproductive health and rights. And by withdrawing U.S. government support, that sends a really important message to all of our partners around the world that the United States is no longer going to be a barrier to progress when it comes to reproductive freedom. And then lastly, on the global side, I want to make sure to highlight that late last month, during the release of the State Department's 2020 country reports on human rights practices, Secretary of State Antony Blinken also announced the United States will be resuming reporting on reproductive rights. And that is a truly critical step towards fulfilling the Biden-Harris administration's commitment to recognizing that sexual and reproductive rights are human rights. So I'll stop there for now. Much more to come.
Yeah, I think the human rights reports one is one of those things that may not seem like a big deal, but is a really big deal because so many countries use the U.S. human rights reports, including obviously the U.S., but that's how it's used during people trying to seek asylum in the U.S. And if it's not listed that, reproductive rights violations exist in that country, then judges can't use it as a reason for asylum. So it really actually makes a huge difference.
For sure.
Okay, so that's the global bucket, which that's a lot of big things. So how about domestic? What have they done domestically?
Sure. So on the domestic side, we also have some very exciting news, most of it pretty recent, in fact. So just this month, the Food and Drug Administration announced that it will stop enforcing a restriction that forced people to travel to a hospital or clinic or medical office to access medication abortion care during the COVID pandemic. And what this really means is it will hopefully dramatically expand access to medication abortion care via telehealth. And that's a hugely meaningful step towards ensuring that pregnant people can access the care they need during the pandemic without having to expose themselves unnecessarily to COVID. So that was really exciting news this month. Also this month, the administration took the first steps towards restoring the Title X program by proposing a rule to end the Trump-Pence administration's domestic gag rule. We're super excited to see the domestic gag rule on its way out and really restore the Title X program so that folks can access the family planning services that they need. And then the last piece I want to make sure to mention actually impacts both domestic and global reproductive freedom. And it's that in March, the Biden administration officially established the White House Gender Policy Council, which is a historic council that will work to advance gender equity. And in its charge, it includes explicit commitment to promoting sexual and reproductive health and rights. And I just want to emphasize that because continuing to see that explicit commitment from the administration is really important, not just here in the US, but also around the world.
Well, and it's also just really important because I remember how much pushing and shoving we had to do to get the Obama administration to recognize sexual and reproductive health and reproductive rights. So it's a big change that happened right away, which is really nice to see that they are really prioritizing sexual and reproductive health and rights.
I agree. It's great to sort of be starting off on the right foot here on that front, which is very exciting.
So I think another bucket, like we've all been so focused on policy. And I think one place that is just as important because it can really impact policy is appointments and who is in office and who is in positions to make these things happen. What has been going on around appointments in the administration?
Sure. So as you said, personnel really shapes policy. And one of the most exciting things that we've seen in the last couple of months, in the last 100 days, is that the president has really charted a new course for reproductive freedom through the cabinet and beyond. So this is a historically diverse group of leaders that includes a lot of folks that I think we can really count on to safeguard and advance reproductive freedom at home and abroad. So there are just a couple that I'll highlight specifically. It probably goes without saying that the Secretary of Health and Human Services is a truly essential role for reproductive freedom. And we do have a real champion in Secretary Xavier Becerra. During his time as California Attorney General, Secretary Becerra did critical work to protect and expand reproductive freedom, including abortion access in the state of California. And we look forward to him continuing that work in this administration. And then, in addition to Secretary Becerra, I want to make sure to shine a light on Dr. Rachel Levine, who has been confirmed as Assistant Secretary of Health. And it's not only critical because of her strong support for sexual and reproductive health and rights, but also because she made history as the first openly transgender Senate-confirmed federal official, which was just great to see. We're also thrilled to see folks at the Department of Justice that respect fundamental rights, including the right to abortion, and will work to protect everyone's constitutional rights. And those folks include Vanita Gupta, who was recently confirmed as Associate Attorney General, and Kristen Clark, who has been nominated to be the Assistant Attorney General for Civil Rights. And both of these women are really unwavering champions for freedom and for justice. So excited to see the work that they will do at the Department of Justice. And then we're also really excited to see folks installed in critical foreign policy positions that will ensure advancing sexual and reproductive health rights and justice is a critical component of U.S. foreign policy and foreign assistance. These folks include Secretary of State Antony Blinken, who I mentioned earlier, UN Ambassador Linda Thomas-Greenfield, and USAID Administrator Samantha Power, who was just confirmed this week. So really excited to see all of the work that those folks will do. And then finally, I would be remiss not to mention that Vice President Harris has made history as the first woman, the first Black person, the first Indian American person elected Vice President of the United States. And it's pretty clear that her leadership is already making a difference in centering the experiences of women and people of color. For example, in April, the White House issued its first ever proclamation on Black Maternal Health Week. And Vice President Harris joined a roundtable event about tackling the Black maternal health crisis. And then the administration made the state of Illinois the first state to receive federal approval to provide the full range of Medicaid benefits for 12 months postpartum. So really looking forward to seeing more of her work in action as well.
Yeah. And I think also along that line, and I may be wrong, so sorry, y'all, but I think she is also the highest level person to speak at the Commission on the Status of Women. And Vice President Harris gave remarks there. And so that was really great to see the high level U.S. engagement at the Commission on the Status of Women. And I think one other piece, and we'll not go into it because it's just starting to happen, but is also really important for all of these things we are talking about, is one of the things we talked about a lot under the Trump administration is the reshaping of the federal judiciary. And Biden has been able to start sending his first couple slates of nominees up. It's really great to see some nominees who support reproductive rights coming up before the Senate.
Agreed. And, on that front, as you said, we're really happy to see such a diverse slate of nominees coming out of the White House. And I just want to highlight one in particular who had a hearing this week, Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson, who's been nominated to the U.S. Circuit Court, or the U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia Circuit. And Judge Jackson has really been a champion for reproductive freedom throughout her career. So we're excited to see her confirmed to the D.C. Circuit, which is pretty much the second highest court in the land. So just very excited to see her there.
Yeah, I've been really excited about just the diversity and the range of experience we're seeing for all the appointments, not just in the judiciary, but just in the cabinet too. It's been really such a breath of fresh air. Okay, so that's all of the good parts. So we have a lot of really big asks for the administration, but maybe we'll focus first in things we would have liked to have seen in the first 100 days, and then we'll get to some of the bigger stuff that we still want to see them do. So where have they fallen short in the first 100 days?
It's a great question. And actually, I think that comes to mind the most is really sort of a cross-cutting issue across many of our asks. And it's that, after 4 years of the Trump administration, coupled with anti-choice state lawmakers moving at a truly breakneck speed to pass as many abortion bans and restrictions as they possibly can. And that means that, while abortion remains legal in all 50 states, the state of access across the country is really incredibly dire. So I think one thing that we'd hope to have seen in the last 100 days and hope to see in the future is just a little more of a sense of urgency when it comes to undoing Trump's harmful policies and putting in place policies that will protect and expand reproductive freedom. So I think whether it's expanding access to medication abortion or restoring the Title X program, or policies that will advance sexual and reproductive health and rights and justice abroad, we really need the administration to take action as swiftly as humanly possible. And I think sometimes things have moved a little slower than many folks would have liked. And, we know that the American people are with us. The vast majority of Americans support the legal right to abortion, and protecting and expanding reproductive freedom must be a priority for this administration. And the speed piece is really key in terms of not just undoing the bad, but putting in place policies that will move us forward. And so I think that is really the biggest thing that comes to mind that I think the administration has fallen a little short on, and that we'd like to see more of a sense of urgency in the next 100 days.
Yeah, I think that's true, because right now it does really feel like we're just fixing the things that the Trump administration did, but we need to move past that and be taking proactive action to improve access. I think, one of the things I will talk about in the intro to this episode is the Guttmacher data that came out last week when this comes out, talking about just the breakneck pace that states are passing abortion restrictions, like 68 new restrictions since January, is just absolutely unbelievable. And it kind of was just quiet, right? Like I knew there were restrictions happening, but to see there were 68 really took me aback. Like I must have clearly missed some.
I agree. And I think we can't really uncouple that from the breakneck pace of both anti-voting rights laws we're seeing at the state level and anti-trans laws we're seeing at the state level. And like those three trends coupled together have really created a crisis for people's rights and just ability to live their lives. And I would like to see some really swift action and a commitment from the administration that that's not something that the federal government will stand for under President Biden.
Absolutely. Okay, so that's things we'd have liked to have seen in the first 100 days. And actually, one more thing that I think we would absolutely be very remiss to not talk about is the lack of even just referencing abortion.
You know, I think that's right. I think it's the 21st century. It's about time that our federal officials are comfortable just saying the word abortion because, we know where the crisis is, and the crisis is with abortion access, and it's helpful to be explicit about that. So I agree.
Okay. So looking past the first 100 days, what are some of the big asks that are still left for the repro community? Like we said, it's clearly a crisis. And so there are a lot of things that we still need done. So what are some of the big ones?
Sure. So, the list is long and the work continues, lest people be afraid that there's nothing to be done. But the work continues, and I'm hopeful that we will make progress. So just a couple of things to highlight. I think on a lot of our minds right now is the president's budget. Over the course of his many years in public life, we have heard Joe Biden say time and again that your budget reflects your values. And the budget is really a key statement of the administration's priorities, as well as a document for providing guidance to Congress during the appropriations process. So we are hoping to see a president's budget that robustly funds reproductive freedom programs and, very importantly, excludes abortion coverage bans like the Hyde Amendment, as well as denial of care policies like the Weldon Amendment, and policies that undermine abortion access around the world, like reiterations of the Helms Amendment, as well as any other attacks on reproductive freedom. The list can be long of all of these, what we call riders on government funding that restrict reproductive freedom at home and around the world. And we're really hoping to see a change at the federal level when it comes to the president's budget. So we are hoping to see that sometime this spring. Stay tuned. And I can talk a little later about sort of what folks can do to make their voices heard to the White House to emphasize how important it is that the president's budget does not include any attacks on reproductive health rights and justice. The second thing I want to highlight is that, building on this important first step of making medication abortion more accessible during the pandemic, we are urging the FDA to initiate a comprehensive review of all of its restrictions on medication abortion so that people's access to care reflects science and not these politically motivated restrictions that have been in place for far too long. So hopefully we will see that process underway soon. And then I also want to make sure, as we have talked about, there are a lot of bad Trump regulations and policies that limit access to care that are still in place. Some of them are blocked by court order, but they are still on the books as federal regulations. So these include attempts to expand already harmful denial of care laws, as well as attacks on contraception coverage, requirements that make abortion coverage more burdensome in the Affordable Care Act marketplaces. And those are just, 3 examples. But we're really hoping to see the regulatory process begin in earnest when it comes to undoing these harmful Trump policies. And lastly, I think we really hope that the president will continue to nominate and appoint judges and executive branch officials that have positive records on reproductive freedom, health, rights, and justice. I mean, with respect to judges, as we've talked about a little bit, in light of what Donald Trump did to the courts, nominating over 220 judges in a single term, including 3 Supreme Court justices, as well as, the role that the courts play in holding the line against this onslaught of state attacks on abortion access, it is absolutely critical that the president nominate judges that have a positive record on reproductive freedom and that will protect our fundamental rights in the courts. And then on the executive branch side, there's still a number of important positions that remain to be filled. The FDA commissioner, for example, has yet to be named, and filling that position with a principled leader who will respect scientific integrity and evidence-based medicine, and that will resist and speak out against, political intimidation and interference at the FDA is really essential for advancing reproductive freedom for people around the country. We'd also hope to see a nominee for the ambassador at large for global women's issues that understands that sexual and reproductive health and rights really play a critical role in advancing gender equity around the world. And so we'd love to see someone that has that understanding, because it's something that has been at times lacking in that space. And then finally, there's also, a number of positions that do not require Senate confirmation that are still critical to our work. And so we look forward to seeing qualified appointees being selected for those positions. And I want to, specifically name the director of the HHS Office for Civil Rights, plays a critical role in making sure people can access healthcare free from discrimination. And then also the Deputy Assistant Secretary for Population Affairs at HHS oversees the Title X program and will play a really important role in restoring the program. So I think those are the positions to highlight. It's not an exhaustive list, but there's a lot of work to be done.
There's so much, and at times it feels overwhelming. And even with your short list, I was like, oh, I forgot about that. Oh, yeah, there was that policy to make it harder for abortion insurance. I totally forgot about that one. There was just, the attacks were never ending under the Trump administration, that it's hard to think back to all the things that are going to need to be fixed. And that doesn't even count moving forward. It's just things that have to be fixed.
Yep. It's, it's one step at a time is, I think, how it's helpful to think about this, because it can be a little overwhelming to think of everything that needs to be done in its entirety. But we are making progress, and we will continue to make progress. So I'm hopeful.
Yes, I'm excited for what we can accomplish. And I think, the right people are getting put in place to make these things happen. And some of those things can't happen until the people were put in place. So if they're not hadn't happened with the speed we wanted for the first 100 days, now that the people are there, I'm hoping things can speed up. Hopefully. Okay, so we always like to end with, what actions can our audience take? So what can the audience do right now to make sure that we get these things happening?
Sure. So there are several things. The first is, make your voice heard to the White House and telling the White House that the president's budget needs to be free of any attacks on reproductive freedom, including the Hyde Amendment and the Weldon Amendment and the Helms Amendment, which I talked about earlier. We actually are hosting a series of events about the president's budget. And if you go to NARAL's website, you can go to our events page, and we will send you lots of resources about how to engage in advocacy around the president's budget and ensuring that the budget is free from attacks on reproductive freedom. So that is one piece. The second piece I want to highlight is, as things are moving in the regulatory space, there will be a lot of opportunities for the public to submit comments as the president begins to roll back regulations. So that is happening right now with the Title 10 rule, but we will continue to see that moving forward as the administration repeals other regulations and policies. And then finally, Congress is not without a role here, particularly on the personnel front. So it's really important for people to call their senators and urge them to confirm pro-reproductive freedom executive branch nominees and judges. So I will stick to those three things for now, but we would be very appreciative of all of the energy that folks could put into those actions.
Yes, it's really important that they are hearing from us because everyone knows that the other side is very loud. So we need to make sure that people are hearing our support and our thanks when they do good things.
Indeed.
Well, Christina, thank you so much for being here today. It was fun talking to you about Biden's first 100 days.
Thank you for having me. And, here's to the next 100 days and hopefully more to come.
Okay, everybody, I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Christina. It was great talking about the great things that have been done, but we still have a ways to go, y'all. I cannot believe we're 100 days in, 100 and then some, and they still have not said the word abortion. I mean, how do you put out a Roe declaration on the commemorating the anniversary of Roe v. Wade and not say the word abortion? That is wild, y'all. And so we are over 100 days in, and they still haven't even said it. So it's great the things they have done. There's still so much that needs to happen. And one of those things is say the word abortion. It's just a word. It's healthcare. You can talk about it. It's okay. Okay. With that, I will see y'all in 2 weeks. If you have any questions for us or topics you'd like us to cover, as always, feel free to email me at jenny@reprosfightback.com. Or you can reach out to us on social media. We're at Repros Fight Back on Facebook and Twitter and Repros FB on Instagram. Otherwise, I will see y'all in 2 weeks. For more information, including show notes from this episode and previous episodes, please visit us at our website at reprosfightback.com. You can also find us on Facebook and Twitter at Repros Fight Back and on Instagram at Repros FB. If you like our show, please help others find it by sharing it with your friends, and please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. Thanks for listening.